Alright, so after doing the GSSR guide, a lot of people were asking me if I was going to do one for the Destiny Order, and I'm of course going to be doing that to make sure that you are going to be spending your hard-earned paid Saint Quartz, because you do also have to use exclusively paid Saint Quartz for this summon as well, in the most effective manner, making sure that you do not put somebody up there that is, well, not very good and not worth your Saint Quartz. Now, do keep in mind that if you do put one of your favorites up here that I really don't say is worth going for, that is all fine. You know, if you want to go for one of your favorite characters because, you know, you don't really plan on summoning for them or they just never really come out at a very good time, I think that is okay. For one of my Destiny Order summons, I put Britomart on there just because I like her. Was she's the best, you know, Lancer for me to put on there? No, but I was just going to be okay with getting her, because if you don't know how this works, functionally you can put one 5-star character, whether they are limited, permanent, or story locked, in each of the class slots, with the extra being split into Extra 1 and Extra 2. Extra 1 being, you know, your Rulers, Avengers, and Moon Cancers, I believe, and then the other one is your Alter Egos, you know, Foreigners, Beasts, and Pretenders. So they're split in that way, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to go over each of these slots and tell you some characters that I think are worth putting in there. Now, again, keep in mind, you might have a favorite character of yours that I don't think is recommended to go for. I think that's perfectly fine, because functionally, you get one of these characters, and the idea is that you don't get shafted on it because you like all of the characters that are there. Obviously, there are certain characters you're going to want over others, like if you put Castoria in the caster slot and you don't get her, that's going to be a little frustrating, but at the end of the day, at least you're walking away with somebody that you like. So with all that being said, if you enjoy these videos, please leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, as I do be putting out these FGO videos nearly every single day. There are some times when I'm feeling a little under the weather and I don't want to be, you know, gagging and stuff in the middle of the video, which is why this video has been delayed from Saturday to Sunday. So with that being said, let's just start off with a general thing. I think it is always worth putting a limited character on here. Permanent characters, if you don't know, as a new character, or new player, not my bad, as a new player, permanent means they are on every single banner. So it means while you're going to summon for a character you might really enjoy, you know, say you're going for Lilith in the future, or you're going on the summer banners, right? You're summoning for Summer Castoria, you could potentially get any of these permanent characters showing up in your summons. That's what we like to call a little spook here in the business. So I don't recommend putting them there, because theoretically you could get them at any point, and whenever we do get those free 5-star selectors, these guys are always going to be on there, with some of the story locked people popping up on those, which is why maybe you shouldn't put some of the story locked guys on there. In the most recent pick, you know, choose your own 5-star thing that we had on JP, they did add some story locked characters. So for just one thing, you want to focus on the limited section over here, because these guys we have not been able to just pick up for free with any of the 5-star selectors, and they don't just appear on other banners, so they are more rare. Now, looking at your Saber options over here, some of the ones that really stand out are people like Muramasa as a fantastic arts AoE character, not only being able to put out some pretty decent damage, but he ramps up as the fight goes on, as he's stacking an arts and NP damage buff on his NP, rocking also a 50% battery and massive crit damage. This guy is just always going to be generally strong. In fact, he has a very funny mechanic where if the enemy tries to put up any dodges or anything, he punishes them by getting even stronger on that second skill, I believe, which is quite strong. I mean, this guy is just good overall. We might have other arts AoE characters that are coming out that might be a bit better at looping, Takadu, but that doesn't mean that this guy got any worse. Back in the day when I was describing the meta shift from somebody like, say, Summer Masashi to Summer Ibuki, I told them that, well, if your Masashi was worth $5, Summer Ibuki might be worth $10, but it doesn't mean the Masashi is no longer worth $5, right? She didn't get any worse, we just get better characters that come out, but this guy is still quite strong. Another very notable character that you might want to put up, especially if you are lacking in the Castoria or any kind of looping support, is Nero Bride. Nero Bride is rocking 3 targetable skills that you can give to any one of your servants, including herself if you just really want to use her, that give them massive attack, a Sky Power mod, massive NP gain, and a pretty chunky 30% battery that are all just really good even if you don't have Castoria, right? Like if you don't have Castoria, this can be a very good substitution for that, functionally being a baby Castoria as I've dubbed her. But even if you do have Castoria, she can be a plug suit option if you don't have somebody like, say, Oberon to function as a plug suit that can also give you a power mod for those pesky sky attribute enemies. And then finally, there is Saber Medusa. I mean, We just got this character on the NA side of things. If you've been using her, you know she's very strong. At this point right now where we're sitting in the current meta for FGO, I think this is a contender to comfortably be the best single target quick character in the game. She is quite strong. There's really no department that she's really lacking in. In fact, this character gets better every time I use them. For some reason, I always assume she has a 30% battery, and I'm like, oh no, she's broken. They gave her a 50% battery. Silly me for thinking that they would hold back on Saber Medusa. And this gives you three really good options. You have a very strong support type character in Nero Bride that can flex as a little bit of a DPS if you needed to use that, but if you need a really strong single target, Saber Medusa is going to be your girl, and then if you need a strong AoE character, then Muramasa is going to be your guy. Obviously, if you need an AoE buster character for buster farming, somebody like Arthur is a good investment, as he will be getting quite a strong buff in the future that I think puts him in contention to being one of the best buster AoE characters in the game, and then Ibuki herself is also really strong. Obviously, I think for farming, someone like Artoria over here is the best, but you don't really want to bank on one of these characters you can get on any single banner, or that they will just give you for free whenever we get those 5-star selectors. Moving down to the archers over here, I think you're kind of in a good spot with whoever you decide to choose. Now, obviously, I think Gilgamesh is always going to be a very strong pick if you need a AoE archer, because this guy is just always going to be really strong in this game. I mean, they just recently gave him a buff that gives all Sky Attribute allies a fat NP damage buff, which as a buster character synergizes really well with Oberon. And not only that, but it just increased his already pretty good damage to even higher lengths, right? He's rocking the 30% battery. He has a power mod against pretty much every single servant in the game. You can't really go wrong with this guy. The only things that he's lacking is stuff like survivability and, you know, actual crit damage, which you wouldn't really notice because he always seems to crit really hard. Durga is also a really solid option if you did not manage to pick her up. This is a character that seems to be a little bit more, I would say, mixed bag by the community, right? You either really love this character or you dislike them. This one has definitely gotten me out of some very tight spots, even without having my own Oberon on the JP side of things, at least at the time of the event coming out. I was able to use Durga to get through the 90++ during Tolmaius' event. I mean, she is quite strong. She's doing a lot of just very good things with her, not only being able to rock a massive 50% battery, but she can swap all of her cards to arts whenever you want for some fat refunding turns. I mean, she's just straight up good. And then there's the elephant in the room, there's Super Orion. Now, Super Orion, before you lock this one in, you gotta kind of think, do you like the gameplay style that he's going into? Because Super Orion is one of those characters that gives himself a lot of self-buffs on his NP, so he can do a lot of really big face card crit damage. And in my usage of this character, after the first NP, he's looking pretty solid, but things get really out of hand once you fire that second NP, which is really easy to do, whether you want to support him with other support type characters like your Koyan Skyas, your Merlins, or if you want to use him as a solo character. There's pros and cons to that. If you have supports with him, it's going to be really easy to be consistently firing this guy's NP, but you're also not going to be seeing his face cards as often, and you really want to do big face card crits with this guy. So if you want a character that kind of fixes and kind of uses that style of gameplay, you know, you could go ahead and put him on there. He's definitely a very solid servant if that is something you're looking for, but I would recommend maybe bring a Super Orion to, you know, some kind of boss fight, or even use the Bleached Earth mission where you have those massive, you know, 1 million HP enemies. Just take him out for a test drive, you know, first. Make sure you like the style of gameplay you're getting out of him. And if you do like that, then you can by all means put him up there. But otherwise, I would recommend going with somebody like Gilgamesh or Durga. If you're looking for a strong single target, Moriarty, unironically, is pretty good. Rocking his own 50% battery, pierce invincibility, he could turn all of your allies evil and then double buff them for a 40% attack buff, which can be really strong. Some of these other ones are falling off a little bit. I mean, Artoria does have very good looping capabilities, but her damage leaves a little bit to be desired. Ishtar can be a little awkward to use as a, for some reason, I've not buffed her, despite how popular she is. Same thing for Summer Jean, definitely could use some buffs coming her way. And Takasugi, I did a video a couple of months ago if you want my thoughts on him. Lancers, this is a bit difficult because I think the obvious pick for these two is either Ereshkigal or Melusine, but it kind of depends on what you need. See, Melusine is always going to have that versatility in her where you don't get the best art single target unit in the game, but she is really capable as one, because functionally as an arts unit, you're only able to use her first two skills, because as soon as you use the third skill, she turns into a Buster AoE character. But that does come with the benefit of having a 100% battery and does make her Black Grail compliant if that's something you're lacking on your account. So it makes her a very strong Buster AoE character and a solid enough single target single target character. Dude, I'm getting all my words mixed up. But then you have Ereshkigal, who I think does make a very convincing argument for herself, as they do keep buffing her over on JP. In fact, now with her most recent buff, you actually can use her with Black Grail if you're going to be doing some Buster farming. And with her rocking a very strong Earth Power mod, if that's a hole you have in your Chaldea, this is definitely a character you want to consider, because she's not only going to be really good as a farmer, but she's also really good going into challenge quests. I mean, she's got skill cooldown, invincibility, debuff immunity. I mean, support on her third skill that gets turned on just by using her NP. I mean, this girl is just nuts. If you're not comfortable with going for Ishtar as your little bit of Rin spice in your account, then definitely go with Ereshkigal. She is very, very strong for that. But if you've already got a really strong Black Grail looper on your account, and you've already got someone that's pretty good for challenge quests, and, you know, someone that's filling that niche that Ereshkigal has for, you know, Earth attribute, and you want a single target, somebody like Skahawk actually can be a really good nuke for your account with a very strong anti-divinity and I guess also anti-undead whenever that does pop up, special power mod. And she's getting just continual buffs that just make her better and better. In fact, not only does she now have the battery and the way to turn on her skills that are chance-based, but they'll actually give her a buff in the future that just whenever she's going to attack for 3 times, she gets 20% battery back. So you could just do a Brave Chain and immediately refund 60% of her battery, which is always going to be rather strong. So if you need a single target, Skahawk is looking good and is always going to be getting better. And these two are really good, depending on what you need. Do you just need more of a Black Grail farmer for raw damage? Or do you need somebody that's a bit more specializing and can help you out in boss fights? Ryder, you've got some pretty awesome options. I wish I could recommend Taigong, but true to my beliefs, I think you should be going to the limited characters because they're going to be harder to get. But it does depend on what you need, because Iskandar over here is a very good investment opportunity because he is going to be an insanely powerful Buster AoE Ryder in about a year whenever they give him his 30% battery so he can do Buster farming. So if that's somebody that you really like and you're fine with waiting for him to become an absolutely dominant Ryder that gives a lot of really strong buffs to the party as well, so he's good for some of those multi-core teams if you need to kind of funnel him into those, he's very strong. If you need somebody that can loop until the cows come home, you get Da Vinci Ryder, because even though her damage isn't the craziest, she can still loop with the best of them and does have some pretty good party buffs that she's able to give, whether it be overcharge or giving everybody, you know, extra battery and stuff. It can be really good in those avenues. But the safest pick, I think, is Reigns. Reigns is very undervalued and underrated as her just basically being a second version of Wazer in your account that is more defensive. I mean, her NP being able to remove all of your class disadvantages can turn your Berserkers from these guys that are made out of paper into guys that are, well, made of cardboard. They're still going to get hit for neutral damage, but it's better than everybody hitting you for super effective damage. I would highly recommend that people go for Reigns. Just having the additional support in your Chaldea that, again, is functionally Waver 2, still gives you, you know, the attack buff and everything, still gives you the 50% battery with all 3 of her skills, but then things like invincibility, extra defense, the debuff purge on her own NP, also giving everybody NP gain. Stuff like that is just quite strong. Constantine, I think, is also really strong, but not only is nobody ever going to put him on there, nobody really wants to use this guy, despite how strong he is, and I don't blame you. He's a very defensive-oriented servant, even with his buff on JP, that I don't think you're ever going to be in a scenario where you're reaching for Constantine for a challenge quest. Anytime you do use him, you'll probably be glad you brought him, but there was probably somebody else that you could have used to get through the fight a bit quicker. But hey, if you like your solo servants, Constantine is a notable one. Now, your casters. Your casters really depend on what your account is lacking. If you don't have anybody here, Castoria is the go-to option, because Castoria is the best support in the game. She turns all of your arts characters into absolute looping machines. You gotta get your grubby little mitts on her. But if you already have Castoria, then you can start eyeing up Scotty, because Scotty is still very good for quick teams, even though Ruler Scotty has dropped, because if you want your quick characters to be doing Black Grail looping, they need that additional Scotty in there for the extra refundability of that massive quick buff she's giving, and she's still giving, you know, the big 50% battery, the big defense down for whenever you plug suit her in for that big final wave damage if you need to use her for that. But if you've already got Scotty, then you can start looking at Merlin, because Merlin is still as good as ever, and he's looking at quite the nasty buff in about a year from now that gives everybody 50% crit damage for free for 3 turns, and an additional 10% battery on top of his charisma on the first skill. But if you are rocking all 3 of them, then it's kind of just dealer's choice at that point. If you've already got all these supports over here, you could just pick somebody that you like. For me, for example, I already have all 3 of them, so I'm kind of looking at maybe picking up Izumo because I don't have her, or maybe Ilya because I want to pick up all of the costume characters as a little collector's thing, because I kind of already have everybody here. So I'm looking at maybe picking up one of these newer characters, and you can look at it in that way, because all of the other casters here are just pretty solid. I mean, Nerocaster over here definitely benefits a lot from next anniversary whenever we get the Append 5 update, letting you knock down her skill cooldown so you can actually loop her 3rd skill for another massive 50% attack buff. That definitely helps her out in the damage department, but that's if you need an AoE for your caster. If you need a single target, then you got Ilya for the Buster variety and Izumo in the quick variety, right? Like, you got really strong single target DPSs here that are quite solid, and even somebody like Murasaki can really help you get the job done if you also want to give the entire party that demonic power mod, and she can loop fairly well. And then, I mean, Da Vinci is just kind of a big megaton hammer, and they just keep giving her buffs, so she's really just never going to be worse than even just good. So it really just depends on what you need. Assassins, this is, again, really, do you have Koyanskaya or not? Because if you don't have Koyanskaya, similar to Castoria, she turns on all of your Buster characters being able to do Buster looping, and you want to have that availability in your account. It definitely makes a lot of those Buster characters infinitely better once you can turn them on with Koyanskaya, especially with Ace the Savior, the anniversary character, really appreciating Koyanskaya over here because of what she does for her 3rd skill and how OP that is. But if you've got a Kukulkan, an Arjuna Alter, a Morgan, a Saber Artoria, Saber Ibuki, any of these random, Buster AoE characters that are really strong, and you want to use them to their full force, I mean, even that Iskandar after his buff is going to be needing somebody like Koyanskaya to become that really dummy nutty broken servant. So Koyanskaya should be your #1 priority. But after that, it does split into what do you need on your account, because even though Kama, I think, is a very strong single target character, if you're already rocking a lot of different strong single targets on your account, you can pass her up for somebody like Tetz, who has his own looping system, because the both of them give each other massive attack buffs because he buffs people that have a guts, and would you look at that, Tetz gives himself a buff, but then they also functionally have a 50% battery while also giving an additional 30% to the other 2 Tetzkali Polkas that you have. They're just kind of are giving everybody battery and stuff, so you can kind of just use the 2 of them in conjunction as their own looping setup, right? So that makes him really strong. But maybe you've already got a really strong Arts AoE character and you're not interested in doing double Tet setups. Then instead of maybe going for Kama, who, again, I'm not saying don't pick Kama. Kama is definitely good enough to pick, but you needed a single target. King Hassan can be very strong, as he is, I believe, coming up on a 50% battery buff. I'm not exactly sure off the top of my head when he's getting that, but it makes him really dang good, especially if you need a single target character to do looping for you, because there is some nodes where you need to do single target looping, and oh, would you look at that, Koyanskaya can help him out with that. Not to say that these other characters aren't good. I mean, I think Huyon is pretty solid, and you are getting a very strong buff in about a year from now that is going to make you quite strong, maybe a year and a half from now, but it makes Semiramis quite strong. But the ones that I would prioritize is going for Koyanskaya to turn your Buster characters on, then just kind of looking at, well, do I need an AoE slash kind of self-sufficient kind of looping system for my account, or do I just need somebody that can do really big damage? And then if the answer is single target, Kama or King Hassan, or if you need AoE, Huyon or Semiramis over here. And then we have Berserkers. Realistically, this does just come down to what your box needs. I mean, Arjuna Alter is an insanely good pick because he just does really strong damage against anybody. He's not reliant on power mods like somebody like, say, Raiko or Morgan over here. So if you just need a generalist, big damaging beat stick, kind of like Melusine over here, but for Berserkers, Arjuna Alter is going to be your guy. But say you already have Arjuna Alter, or you already have maybe some other AoE character that kind of deals really good general damage for you. You've got a Kukulkan, you've got yourself an Archetype Earth with like a dupe or 2 into her. So you're like, I'm looking for somebody with a little bit more specificity going on. Morgan is really good because she has triple power mods against not only Man, but Fae and Knights of the Round Table, and it works really well in invincibility team comps where functionally you don't allow the enemy to ever do damage against you. That's always going to be really broken. So if you want somebody that is a little bit more niche, but is really good going into boss fights, then Morgan can be your girl. But maybe you've already got somebody to handle those man attribute enemies for you, then you could consider picking up Raiko. She's getting a buff actually this anniversary that not only fixes her buster skill, but gives her a 30% battery, so she is now able to do farming, and on her third skill, she's got a very, very nasty sky attribute power mod, along with 2 other things, so she's got a pretty good diverse net, very similar to Morgan over here actually, with the earth and sky, you know, kind of net on enemies she's able to attack. So that makes her really strong if you need those bases covered. Obviously, Summer Ibuki makes a very strong convincing case for her, as I am convinced that this is the best arts AoE character in the game for farming. I mean, she does it all. She's good for multi-core because of her first and second skill. The 50% battery means that she's able to just keep chugging along with her looping if the enemies are a little bit more weird, with them being berserkers or assassins, giving you no refund back, or maybe it's a weird node where it's like a 3-2-1 node. She can use that 50% battery to guarantee that she'll be able to loop that last node. I mean, this character is just really strong. Plus, going into boss fight, she has the Earth Power mod and removes all enemy defensive buffs whenever she uses her NP, which is crazy strong. So just kind of gauge what you need. Do you just need someone that's capable of dropping a megaton nuke on pretty much anybody? Then go with Arjuna Alter. If you want somebody that is a little bit more niche but does have some really good challenge quest integrations, you can use Morgan. If you just want somebody to cover those pesky earth and sky attribute enemies for your buster characters, Raiko's got that for you. And then if you just need the best arts looper in the game, you go for Summer Ibuki. And now we have the kind of split over here for Extra 1 and Extra 2. For Extra 1 over here, obviously the one that you should be lasering on immediately is going to be Ruler Scotty, because Ruler Scotty is like Caster Scotty, but better, right? She gives you the 65% quick buff. You know, she's giving you the attack buff instead of the defense down, so your overall damage over 3 nodes is going to be higher. She can also be a quick looper for you if you don't have one already. This is just a phenomenal character that you should be focusing on if you don't already have her. But then you can kind of break away and look at some other characters. Maybe you've already got Ruler Scotty, or you just don't have very good quick characters on your account, so even if you did get her, you know, you weren't going to be able to use her very well. Then you have some really good options in here. For single target, Jolter and Tyra are always going to be king. It just really depends on what do you want to do more. Tyra is very strong for taking out Genji enemies. She has the massive 100% crit damage, and she gets stronger as the fight goes on because she has the guts that whenever they're triggered gives her this like wrathful vengeance buff that increases the damage she does on her own NP. Plus, they buffed her and she just does even more damage, and that buff I believe is coming during Ordeal Call 2, which would be in about a year from now. It drops around a little before summer, so that is going to make her even better. Same thing for Jolter. She gets a buff whenever Ordeal Call 2 rolls around that gives her a 50% battery, so she can not only be really good going into boss fights, just launching her NP immediately and smoking them with the highest attack in the game, which again, she might not have the 100% crit damage that Tyra does, but 50% is still really strong when you have the highest attack in the game and you're bombing 30 stars every time you fire your NP, so you're always loaded up and ready to go for crits. But then if you need somebody to take out large enemies in single target nodes, don't let her being an Avenger fool you that, oh, it's going to be neutral damage, so it's not going to be very good. This girl can hit, and she can hit hard. Neutral, I mean, she's easily clearing the 3 to 600k range. Granted, depends on the CEs you're using. Are you black grailed? Do you have a couple of extra NP copies into her? Granted, mine's NP2 and she's grailed a little bit, so mine might be a little bit stronger. Results may vary, but just to say, she can hit, and she can hit really dang hard. Outside of that, if you're looking for AoEs, you have quite a few good options on here. If you're trying to cover your bases, in that you need a good arts looper, so maybe you're picking, you know, Summer Ibuki over here, but you're like, and just in case I don't land on the Berserker slot, let me go ahead and put Summer Kama on here, because Summer Kama is a really strong arts AoE looper, and even somebody like Space Ishtar can really perform well as an arts AoE looper if you need somebody like that. So someone like that can cover your bases. I probably would lean into just, what do you need more? Do you need a bit better looping, or do you need a bit better damage? And even that can kind of get a little bit subjective depending on if you do end up landing her arts buff on her third skill, and that, you know, does kind of make things a little bit iffy. Just more consistency, I would go for Kama, because Space Ishtar I really like. Her damage can get absurd as you're stacking through all 3 of the waves, but if you do miss out on the arts buff on her third skill because it is chance based, not only does her looping suffer a lot, but her damage does also suffer as well. But if you're needing some arts AoE loopers, they're very strong for that. if you just want a survivability servant, while he might be a little bit dated, Qi Shi Huang is still very, very strong if you need a good de facto solo servant. He's somebody that I definitely would consider. If you're fine with investing for a good Buster AoE option, Ruler Artoria recently got a buff on the JP side of things that makes her really dang strong, making her offensive output a lot higher so she can actually take out the enemies when you're bringing her to some of these farming nodes. And then obviously there's Archetype Earth. Even at NP1, you may hear people say that this character is no good, you know, they're married to Black Grail, and the damage is definitely not super great at NP1, but if you already have her, putting her here to try to get an NP2, as from my own personal experience bagging an arc on my GSSR a couple of months ago for New Year's, this character is very, very strong as soon as you get them an NP2. So investing in them just to get them an NP1, or if you already have them to get another NP level, is never going to be bad, because even at NP1, think of it this way. It's a 100% battery character, so they can always fire their NP if you need them to do that. They can always help you in clearing out a wave, and then as soon as they fire that NP, they give everybody a 30% battery on their third skill because she set up her domain. So if you're needing help in farming nodes, maybe you're missing out on a little bit of extra NP, she can also be very helpful for that. So those are some of the notable people in Extra 1. In Extra 2, you've got a bunch of just absolute silver bullets in here. I mean, first of all, if you can get your grubby little mitts on Oberon over here, you've won the game. I mean, all of your guys are going to be doing infinitely more damage. Black Grail becomes an absolute godsend on your account, so he's someone to consider. But unfortunately, there are a lot of other really strong characters here, because say you already have Koyenskaya, but you're lacking a really convincing Buster AoE character, Kukulkan is here, Tiamat is here. These guys are absolute psychopaths. They do ridiculous amounts of damage. They're bonkers. And so in that avenue, you might want to forego going for Oberon so that you can turn your Buster AoE setups to be something good, because again, you need good characters to use with Oberon at the end of the day. You know, if your best Buster AoE character is an NP1 Casterku, it might be time to upgrade to Kukulkan, because Kukulkan is arguably one of the best Buster AoE characters in the game, at least right now for NA. I know that there is a certain Typhon that's on right up right now on JP that is giving her a little bit of a run for her money with how good she is, but Kukulkan will always be very strong. So you can kind of use this to patch holes in your account. If you're looking for a really strong Buster AoE character, you can go for one of them, and then just try to get Oberon during his raid up during summer, because remember, like a week or two after this drops on NA, Oberon will have the male banner on the summer event, and he'll be on raid up, so you can just try to go for him there. Draco is also here, and Draco is nuts. She's ridiculous. If you're not planning on going for Summer Castoria, because maybe you're going to be summoning for Oberon's banner instead, then you could just slap Draco on here and hope that you just lock down all of these classes, because as soon as you get Draco, all the single targets in here, I'm not going to say are irrelevant, but if you've used Draco, you know that once you get her, you kind of just use her for all of these fights. You know, it's like, oh, we're fighting an archer? Sorry, Skahawk, you're going in the bin. It's Draco time. Oh, we're fighting a Saber? Yeah, hate to bring it to you, my guy Moriarty, but Draco's going to be handling this one. As soon as you get her, your life gets a lot easier, because she just becomes the win button for any of those fights. So she is definitely a very convincing character to pick on this. Melt is already pretty good right now, but is coming up on a buff that lets her compete for the best single target quick character in the game. I mean, Melt at that point just becomes kind of disgusting, right? So if you're lacking a really strong single target character, not only is she good right now, but she's going to be dummy, nutty, broken in the future. And then there's also people like Proto Merlin, where if you've kind of already got a lot of these characters, you know, you've already got Oberon, maybe you've already bagged Draco, and maybe you're just one of those guys that doesn't really care about Kukulkan, or maybe you don't really care about Melt over here, then Proto Merlin is great. I mean, it's literally just Arts Merlin. It lets you diversify your box a little bit instead of having to bring Merlin for all of these setups, especially if your, DPS might be Arts, you could just be that much more efficient. I mean, there are some scenarios where I have done some quote-unquote immortal team comps with Summer Ibuki, but because I don't have, my own Lady Avalon, I have to support her with the Merlin, who can't give her the full bonus of an arts buff. He can still buff her really well, but I can't get that little bit of extra value from a massive arts buff that Proto Merlin would give, and it just feels like it's slightly less efficient. So in those scenarios, go for your Proto Merlin, right? Go ahead and bag her. This is kind of just the dealer's choice. What do you need? Is your box pretty well set up? Then try to get Oberon. If you've already got him, maybe pick up a strong Buster AoE DPS if you're lacking that. If you just want to trivialize all of the main class fights in the game, bada boom, bada bring Draco over here. If you need yourself a little bit of extra zest in your arts teams, then get yourself a Lady Avalon. And that's not even to say if you've got those guys, I mean, Bazette's really strong. Rasputin's pretty strong. I mean, you've also got Doman over here that just turns all of your chaotic evil people into absolute sociopaths and lets them just rum Hamtaro on all of the fights in the game. Same thing for Van Gogh. You get her, congratulations, all of your foreigners are now just dummy nutty broken. She just raises them up by like 1 to 2 tiers. Because there is a difference between, you know, say, a foreigner that's being used by themselves. You might say, oh, well, you know, yeah, my Jacques is pretty good right now. Then you slap Van Gogh in that team comp and you're like, oh, I see. So they're just crazy. They're broken now because Van Gogh is disgustingly good. And I believe she even got buffed on JP, which I was like, they didn't need to do all that. They did not need to make this character that's already disgusting and kind of just can carry the entire foreigner class on her own any better. But they did. They made her better. So with all that being said, I hope this was helpful for you guys in kind of breaking down what some of your decisions and thought processes should be for the Destiny Order Summon. Do keep in mind that the general pool of characters that you can get spooked by on this banner is every character in the game. My bad, misspoke there. But what that means is that, say, you know, you set up your Destiny Order Summon and you don't put Oberon on your thing, he can still be a random other character you get. You're just guaranteed to get one of the characters you put into one of the slots, but anybody here can spook you. On my Destiny Order last year on JP, I did not put Azumi on there, or is it Azumi no Sora or something like that? It's the twins, the green and orange twin that we got last year for the, you know, old Tight Moon webpage. I didn't put them on there, and they just showed up onto my summons. Like, Britomart was the Lancer I think I got, and then they just showed up and said, hey, we're bonus, like we just showed up. So keep in mind that the spook pool for this one is everybody. So even if you don't put Castoria on there, somebody's going to get spooked by a Castoria. She's just going to randomly show up and say, hey, I know you didn't want me, but I'm showing up. So just keep that in mind as well, that even if you're like, ah, man, you know, I'm really hoping to get one of these guys, you can still get randomly surprised by one of these characters because it's every character in the game. But the one that you pick, the one that you put into the slots, you are guaranteed to get one of them. So keep that in mind. But with all that being said, if you have any further questions, drop your comments in the comment section down below, and I will try to my best to get to all of the comments down there and help you guys out. There's also the Discord down in the description down below. And then I also stream generally every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, unless I got like IRL plans or something. You know, if the boys are like, hey, we're going out, we're going to go get Din Din, I'm like, the boys are streaming, and I'm like, I'm not gonna lie, the boys is always gonna win that one. So unless I plan very poorly and I don't schedule myself properly, then I will be streaming every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. I'd also like to start streaming Tuesdays and Thursdays for Star Rail because I really want to get my butt in gear because Saber is like 2 weeks away or something. So with that, we're also going to be trying to do that as well. So with all that being said, I'm going to stop yapping, I'm going to stop rambling, and I'm going to go ahead, get out of here. You guys have yourselves a nice day, and I'll catch y'all in the next one. Peace, late guys.